Hello BookTube, I'm Peg and welcome to my channel. This is the perfect week for book prize addicts such as myself because there's four book prizes being awarded or have been awarded during this week. So I'm here to talk about a couple of them today, and several were awarded just last night. Incidentally, since I'm talking about so many books, I have my necklace with full bookshelf on it. Okay, last night here in the U.S., they awarded the National Book Award for four different categories: fiction, nonfiction, children's literature, and poetry, I believe. But of course, I'm just interested in the fiction one at this point. And the winner of that was Sing Unburied Sing by Jessamine Ward. Now, she has won a National Book Award previously in 2011 for her novel called The Bones, Unsalvaged Bones, I believe it was. Anyway, and they both deal with a post-Katrina Mississippi landscape. And this one, The Guardian calls a cross between half road trip and half ghost story. And actually it is. In the road trip was one I've called The Road Trip from Hell. It ought to be read just for that. So this is probably a worthy winner, and we'll see if she can win a third time. Who knows? Okay. Big news for me was the Goldsmiths Prize was also awarded last night. I did a whole video on the short list for it on my last video and chose my favorite, but my favorite didn't win, but I'm real happy with the one that did. The winner was Happy by Nicola Barker. And as I had said before, this was probably the most experimental in terms of the way it was printed. Actually, it deals with a future world where people are supposed to always be happy, utopia, and not have any unwanted emotions, etc. And they have a sensor that they link into people's brain that checks to make sure you're not having an excess emotion of some sort that might lead to less than happiness. And it starts out with, you can't see it here, but it in the graph of the brain reading, if it's a word that seems to be too emotional, it's done in a color of pink, purple, and red, and it gets darker the worse the emotion is. And the main character, the woman in it, kind of has a real problem with this, and towards the end we get all kinds of printed different artwork to show her emotional state. And it's really done, and the artwork I think is great too. So congratulations, Nicola Barker. Good going. Okay, now we have a big one coming up. We have the Scotiabank Giller Prize for Best Canadian Novel, and it will be awarded on November 20th, next Monday. So I will be back on Sunday giving a full report on the short list for that, and of course who I think should win. But right now I'm finishing up the last one called I Am a Truck. These are all really good novels. I read the other Canadian prize list, the Governor Generals, and both of them, I'm just really, this is my first experiment or reading of much Canadian literature, and I'm just really impressed and amazed by some of the great writing, and I'm looking forward to making a report on the ones on this. Okay, we also have the DSC Asian Prize that will be coming up. And I'm, of course, reading the short list of that, so I'll be back at a future date to talk about that. Okay, so as for my own TBR for the Tome Topple Challenge that starts tomorrow the 17th and runs for 2 weeks, I've been making videos for several weeks on how I was going about selecting my what I wanted to read and going through different tomes and experimenting, but in the end, I just want to read something fun. So I have been getting interested in the genre called Neo-Victorianism lately, and there are many books recently out or in the last few decades, and the thing is they are set in the Victorian world, but they're written in the present world. And as I've read several places, sometimes the neo-Victorian novels give a much better feel and knowledge of the Victorian times than the actual Victorian novels, because today's authors have done so much research before they write these, and they're aware of what we don't know about the Victorian world, whereas the Victorian authors figured their readers already knew the little things like what they ate, what they had with their tea, etc., all the things that we're really interested to hear about today. So I think this, I'll have more to say in a future video about neo-Victorianism, because I've done some reading on it, and I really think it's becoming a serious, actually, genre, and there's been several scholarly papers written on it and articles, which I'll talk about that later. Now we just want to have fun. So I've picked out 3. Oh, by the way, I've put a list on the bottom of the one of the Guardian's list of the best Victorian novels, and there's quite a few other lists, and so I've picked out some books I've had around that are on those lists that I just think will be fun to read. The first one is Crimson Petal and White by Michael Faber, 900 pages. But I understand this is about a prostitute named Sugar who is very smart and loves to read and goes far in the world. So that was on several of the lists. This one is a non-mystery. It's a novel by Julian Barnes called Arthur and George, and I don't really know too much about it, but does deal with 2 men in Victorian times and the different lives they lead, and I'm sure it's well researched as far as the Victorian characteristics and descriptions, etc. And last, I have the book that was the first on several of the suggested lists I read, and it's called Fingersmith by Sarah Walters. Haven't started it yet, but I'm sure it'll be good. I've read several of hers. In fact, she pretty much specializes in neo-Victorian novels and some mysteries, so I'm looking forward to this. Okay, I'll be back in a few days to talk about that Canadian prize, the Giller. Oh, and I've linked it down below so you can see what's on the short list if anybody wants to quickly read some of them. So tomorrow I'll start reading those tomes. So y'all have a good day and talk to you later. Bye.